Life really is, for a lack of a better illustration, like a roller coaster. The path can be predicted because the tracks are laid out before you. But if you've never been on said roller coaster, you're probably not quite ready for the ups, downs, twists, and turns that this thing is gonna take you through.
Ryan, you wanna look at this shot?
Good job, Ollie. This is something that I actually struggled with a lot at the beginning. So you get nervous, and at this point you might be thinking, what in the world am I doing? The truth is, for me personally, this is the fun part about being a full-time filmmaker and running my own business. This is a very common story for all of those who set forth on the path to fulfilling their dreams. So today, I thought it was time to tell you mine.
I had a dream last night when I woke up.
Let's light this place up.
It's gone.
What's happening? My name is Ryan, and if you're new with us, welcome. I truly appreciate you being here. To fully understand why I gave up my dream studio, I first have to take you through my journey a bit. Right now, I am a full-time filmmaker, but that hasn't always been the case. And I've been down a lot of different career paths, a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns and all of the rest to get there. When I started Fox and Crown Creative in 2013, I had two goals in mind. Number one, I wanted to have a career as a creative professional. And number two, I wanted to own my own studio one day. So what happened? Well, let me take you to the old studio space so we could talk about it. Whew. Wow. It's pretty weird being in here. I'm actually standing in what we used to call our common room. This is where we would all hang out and eat lunch, have meetings with people and things like that. It is a 5-office studio with a common room and our gear cage, which is right behind me, that open door there. If you watched any of our old videos or if you've been around for a while on the channel, you've probably seen all of these rooms before. This has truly been a dream of mine for almost 10 years. I imagined getting this studio specifically. So why am I giving it up? All right, we're gonna have to adjust. The window's just gonna have to be blown out for this. Some of you might recognize this space. I've done a lot of videos on my channel in this space. As a matter of fact, one of the first videos that kind of took off was in this room. But anyway, you're not here for that. So why am I giving this place up? Well, in order to get into that, I kind of have to get into a little bit of the story.
Well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Let's go back to my condo and eat dinner.
Okay, I know. I didn't even know you slept.
Yeah, boy.
If you've been following the channel for some time, you know that way back when I was 8 years old, I fell in love with movies and movie making. I used to watch all the behind the scenes in every movie that I would watch. I would just consume as much as I could, and I was just so enamored by this process. So I decided to make my own film, and of course, it was terrible. I'd made a few films with my family, with my brother, my cousins. Fast forward to high school, and this is where I really start to understand the editing process. We used to have 2 VCRs and an editing bay with a whole control system, and it was pretty incredible actually, now that I'm thinking about it. After that, my friends and I would just make couple little short films. We even entered one into a film festival. Into young adulthood, I was still making movies, or at least writing some, and then eventually went for other creative endeavors and kind of let video and filmmaking lay by the wayside. And that was mainly because in those days, it just seemed like filmmaking was for those who are in Hollywood, making their living, climbing the ladder, and all those things. I just felt like it was too late for me. I used to work for a brewery, and that's kind of where I got my start. And then eventually I started my business, Fox and Crown Creative. That's where the name comes from, in 2013. And being a wedding photographer and did some video. I did some production with my church, my local church at the time in San Diego, and I also offered graphic design services. So this was kind of like a whole melting pot of things that I offered. Then my wife became pregnant with our firstborn, and that was when I realized, okay, it's time to get serious. Soon after that, I was taking on a lot of graphic design and photography clients, a little bit of video here and there, but it wasn't really a main service of mine until a few years later when we moved here to the Pacific Northwest from San Diego, which I know is not for everybody, but it's a dream of mine. And it was then when I started to hire on people, and before I knew it, it quickly went from just me freelancing to becoming a whole agency. And it was also at this point where we started the video department. And when we started our video department, we started making these commercials and documentaries. That was when the spark for filmmaking just came right back. So, future Ryan here. I was just watching the playback, and there's a bit of a gap that's missing in the story, in the timeline. When I moved from San Diego to the Pacific Northwest, all the way to the last bit that you just watched. So I kind of want to just close the gap with two things. And I promise all of this is gonna lead to why I left my dream studio. The first thing is that when we moved to the Pacific Northwest, we couldn't find a place to live. We couldn't even find a place to rent, so we just bought an RV and toured the Oregon coast for about 2.5 years. I think we started doing that in around 2015, 2016, I can't remember. And it wasn't until about 2016 till we finally found a community that we wanted to be a part of. And I started to knock on doors and leave flyers and just let everyone know that I can do creative work. So the work wasn't flowing right away as soon as I moved. I had one or maybe two clients that were consistent at the time. So that was what kind of sustained us, but the jobs weren't, flowing in at the time. But it wasn't long after that when I started to establish myself as a creative in the community, and I started to do some creative work and video production for the local church around there as well. But I think what really kicked things off is when I started the first phase of the agency. I got the very first studio that I renovated. We're gonna talk more about this part of the story a little bit in the second video that's coming out later this week. This is actually the second thing that I wanted to talk about to kind of bridge the gap of this timeline. I was in 3 different studios during this entire time. I had this one studio here, that's kind of what started everything, started the agency, started the video department, started to hire on people, take on interns. And then I moved into another space that was adjacent to the church that I was working for. So I was right next to them, able to do projects with them, and it just kind of worked hand in hand. But it wasn't long after that when the team started to grow exponentially. We signed with a pretty big client, and I needed more hands, more help, and more departments to kind of fulfill the needs and the deliverables for this client. And that was probably the most fun experience I think I've had during this whole thing, as well as the hardest. There are a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns, like I said, and we're gonna get into that. But a lot of this happened over the course of 4 or 5 years. It didn't just all happen right away, is what I guess what I'm trying to say. There's just so much that went on during that time, so many other things too, personal things and the ups and the downs that come with owning a business. But anyway, let's continue on and get into that part of the story. Things were really good at this point, and the studio was thriving. But of course, it all came at a cost. I found myself working anywhere from 10 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week for many years, and I never saw my family. I was also working a second full-time job running the music and the video ministry at my local church. And so doing that and running a full-time agency, I got burnt out. I never actually thought I would experience burnout. I definitely didn't know that I was experiencing that at the time until a little bit later. It was around this time when I remembered a question that a good friend asked me many years prior to this. Out of all the services that you offer, which one brings you the most joy? Which one are you most passionate about? And it was at this time when I looked around the office and I started to realize that I was so distracted by building some huge agency with all of these different clients and this legacy when What I really wanted was just to make movies, to make films. The dream that I had back in the day when I was a kid, and all I wanted to do was make movies. This sparked something within me and changed things forever. I also realized that I've been so focused on this agency that I have not only completely forgotten my childhood dream, but also my family's dreams and goals and passions and desires. This is the real dream, and for me, it wasn't even a question. So I took action, took a step back, decided to downsize, started to make the pivot from being an agency owner back to being a freelancer, and in this case, a freelance filmmaker. So I packed down my dream studio and moved into the tiny spare room at home. There are some who say that it takes 10 years to reach your goals. I've had this channel since 2021, but it wasn't until this moment when I truly started to take it seriously. I think it was around 2021 or 2022 when I started mentoring, and this truthfully is something that sparked something within me that I didn't even know I had myself, and that is that I love teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
So the mixture of all of this, my passion for filmmaking, my family's goals, and the passion for teaching people filmmaking is how this channel was born. At this point, I was not only focusing on my career as a filmmaker, but also as a YouTuber. I started to take this very seriously and started to think about the audience that I wanted to help, and that was you guys. I want to build a community of people who lift each other up, who inspire each other and cheer each other on. But it wasn't long after this when my wife and I and our family made the realization that we want to enjoy the more important things in life, helping other people, and to be closer to family. So we decided to uproot our family from our community and move closer to family. But because we moved out of the area, I also had to move my studio space. So that's where this shop comes in. And this is probably the whole reason why I'm making this video, is so that I could show you my journey up until now. I don't want to just show up with a studio tour video, which is a follow-up of this video, but we'll get into that in just a second. I don't want to just show up with a studio tour video and not have any context behind it. It's easy to see those videos and kind of feel like the person on the other side has everything, has it all made, but that's most definitely not the truth. I have been through many ups, many downs, many twists, many turns before I got to this point. I wanted to take you on the journey and who I am and my experience, and I also want to be here to help you on that filmmaking journey. And this space works perfectly. I have a studio tour coming up later on this week, and I'll have it linked up or down below if you are interested in checking that out as soon as the video comes out. I will go through some of the renovation, the behind the scenes of how we turned this dusty old shop into a dream home studio for me. This YouTube channel and everything that I'm doing here, I'm super passionate about helping other people like you on their journey as a filmmaker or just as a creative in general. And I want to use this space to keep doing that. I am super excited to do that studio tour, and I am super excited to continue on the journey with you.